Okay, Beseder. Boker Tov, everybody. So let's carry on. We are on Masechet Beit Sadaf Chaf Bet Amud Aleph. So we got up to. We'll just go back for a moment. I didn't have a share last week, so just to refresh our memories, if we go back, Kaf Aleph Amud Bet, we saw the Mishnah. Right, the second Mishnah on the Amud there talks about the three things. Shlosha Dvarim Rabban Gamliel Machmir Kedivrei Beit Shammai. There are three things where Rabban Gamliel was Machmir like Beit Shammai. Normally Paskin like Beit Hillel, but in these three cases he was Paskin like Beit Shammai who are Machmir. So the three cases were Ein Tumnin Tachamin Lekatchila B'Yom Tov, right? Not to insulate the Chamin on Yom Tov for Shabbat. Okay, and we discussed was that the Gemara explained exactly what was the case. Is that where you've done an Eruv Tavshilin or you haven't done an Eruv Tavshilin, or maybe Hatmana is different to the other things. Maybe you've done an Eruv Tavshilin, but for cooking and baking, but not for Hatmana. Okay, we discussed that. We won't go through that again. Second case was Ein Zokfin et HaMenorah b'Yom Tov. You cannot stand up the menorah on Yom Tov. And third thing was Ein Ofin Pitin Glitzin Ela Lekikin. Not to make the sort of thick dough, thick bread, but only to make thin bread on Yom Tov. Those were the three things. Okay, we saw that in the Mishnah. So let's go back. We're now in the Gemara Daf Kaf Bet Amud Aleph. We'll pick it up from the two dots. So I guess something like 15 lines down, two dots, right? And the Gemara says, "Ein zokfin et menorah." Okay, ein zokfin. So the Gemara says, "Make avid." Okay, what exactly is the case? What are you doing? Amal avchina babisna. Okay, this is a type of menorah that's different, I guess, sort of metal, different pieces which come together. So you're not sort of lifting it up, but you are reconstructing it. That would be the issue. Okay, so the michze kevoneh. This is similar to buildings. It appears like you are building. And what is there for the machloket? The Beit Shammai savri yesh binyan b'kelim v'stira b'kelim. Okay, Beit Shammai says you cannot put this menorah back together. Beit Hillel says you can. The reason is this is not a bona fide building, but it is similar to building. And the question is whether we say there's an issur of binyan and stira b'kelim. Right? Generally speaking, when you're building or destroying something, you're building a house, you're building something that is attached to the ground. That is the biblical melacha of binyan. Yeah, we have machloket whether when it comes to kelim, do we say there's binyan stira b'kelim as well? According to Beit Shammai, we say yes. According to Beit Hillel, we say no. Okay. So the case now, we're nearly halfway down the Amud. Ula came to the house of Rav Yehuda. Kam Shamei Zakif Leishlaga. So what happened? The Shamash lifted up the candle. Okay, what's the problem with lifting up the candle? So again, if you Rashi tells us about Shragan Eshel Cheres, Rashi points out as well who are we talking about in this case? Where the story was Ula was the Shammai who Rashi says Kam Shammai de Ula was Ula's Shamash. But in any event, the candles in those days, again, remember the candles of the Mishnah, of the Gemara. This is not the wax candles that we're maybe more used to. But you have the kli kibul, you have sort of this clay pot, which has got the oil inside, right, and put in the wick, and the wick draws from the oil, and that is how the candle burns. Now, as it gets lower and lower, and there's not so much oil in, you're going to have to, this is where you have to start tilting the candle in order to make sure that the wick will draw. Whenever you move it or lift it up, or if you tilt the oil away from the wick, the candle will go out. So he lifted up the candle. Why did he do that? Rashi says, Zakaf Lishlaga, שרוצה שיסתלק השמן לאחוריו, ולא יימשך לאחר פתילה ותכבה. Essentially, he wanted to put the candle out. He's not blowing the candle out, but he's quite indirectly, or maybe even quite directly, causing it to go out. Again, Rashi says, שרוצה שיסתלק השמן. He wants the oil to go away, לאחוריו, wants the oil to go back, and it won't be drawn into the wick, and therefore the candle is going to go out. So that is what the Shamash of Ola did. So So Rav Yehuda says to Ula, he says, hang on a second. He says, Anoten shemen banel chayav mishum mavir. We have a teaching as follows. Anoten shemen banel, somebody who adds oil to the candle, you're adding oil into the kli of the candle, so chayav mishum mavir. That would be chayav for the isur of mavir. That would obviously be on Shabbat, because on Yom Tov we won't be concerned about lighting a candle. By adding new water, adding new oil, you are causing the fire to burn. So he says, and if somebody takes oil out of the candle, so if you're taking the oil out of the candle, you are chayav, that you are extinguishing. That is the malacha. So Ula says, you're right. He says, I don't disagree with that. I don't know why he did it. I didn't want him to do it. I didn't tell him to do it. It wasn't with my approval. Right? This is lavadate. This is Rashi. Asa shamash masha asa. But just before that, let's go back a couple of lines in Rashi. It says, Anoten shemen baner b'Shabbat. Right? When we said if you place oil into the candle, it's chav mishum mavir. Rashi says that's on Shabbat, obviously, because on Yom Tov that would not be a prohibition. Hamistapek, hanotel mimeno v'ochel. You're taking oil out of the candle, you're using it to eat or cook with or whatever. Chayav mishum achabeh. The kibui b'yom tov lo tishtore. Okay, unlike havara, kibui, the melacha of extinguishing, is not a melacha that was permitted on Yom Tov, and therefore that's going to be equally problematic on Shabbat and on Yom Tov. Now, there's an interesting discussion over here. What exactly is the problem? Yeah.
The question. So Ula answered lavadate, meaning what? That I didn't know, or I didn't know that was going to happen, or that.
No, Ula didn't do it. It was his shamash was doing it. It's like when you say like lo dati. It's not. It wasn't. He's doing his own thing. I never told him to do it. I don't want him to do it.
If I don't see in the story that in fact that somebody else did it.
Yeah. It says kam shamei zakav le'leshraga. Kam shamei. That's the shamash.
Oh, okay, fine. Okay.
Yeah. So then he said, and that's why that's so Rashi says, yeah.
I didn't tell him to do it. Yeah, okay, fine.
Right, lavadate. He says, asa shamash mashasa. He did what he did. Okay, you can ask the question. You can say, well, I don't know. Maybe he didn't see. Maybe he didn't know, because we do know. We have a concept that a person is responsible for other people are doing things. Right? If his shamash is doing it, he should tell him. He should teach him. There's a case in the Gemara in Shabbat that talks about the paratosha Rabbi Eliezer. Right, it talks about how the cow of Rabbi Eliezer would go out with something which was a violation of Shabbat, and then the Gemara explains it wasn't actually Rabbi Eliezer's cow; it was his neighbor's. But he should have protested. He should have told him not to. So maybe he didn't see, or he wasn't able to tell him. I don't know.
Okay.
But that's the case. But now, what exactly is the issue? So we saw the Gemara said, "I'm mistapek." Right, so somebody who takes the oil out says, "I'm mistapek meno chayav mishum machabeh." You are extinguishing. Now the case is not that you're taking all the oil out, meaning right now the candle is going to continue to burn. Okay, it's going to extinguish earlier because you're removing some of the fuel. But what is the mechaber that I'm chayav for now? There's a big machloket on the Rishonim. So have a look at Tosfot. Tosfot dibor matcher v'mistapek. So Tosfot says, yeah, so mistapek meno chayav mishum mechaber. Eino רוצה לומר מפני שממהר כיבוי. Okay, you might have thought, and this is the way the Rosh learns, and other Rishonim learn as well. Why are you chayav ya mishum mechaber? Because you are memaher kibui. Because you are speeding up. You are bringing forward the fact that the candle is going to go out. Okay, essentially, there's going to be a big discussion here in the Rishonim and Achronim regarding gram kibui. But if I indirectly cause something to go off, what's the modern application of this? Let's say I have a time switch. I have a time switch on my heating or on my plata or whatever it is. So, and I want to, and I thought there was going to be a long kiddush in the morning, and I was going to get home, and we were only going to start eating. I don't know, 1 o'clock, And it turns out that actually there was the Chazan was very quick and there was no Kiddush because whatever reason and whatever, I get home a lot earlier. So I started eating at 11 o'clock. So now I've got my hot plate is on. It's going to be until 3 in the afternoon. I don't want it until 3 in the afternoon. I want to save electricity. Can I, obviously I can't turn it off, right? Whether it's Shabbat or Yom Tov. Can I now extend it? Well, not extend it. Can I bring forward when it's going to go off? So I'll just say quickly, just so we get the bottom line in terms of Psak Halacha on Shabbat, we generally say that you can extend whatever status the time switch is on. So if it's currently on and I want to keep it on for longer, I can extend it. If it's currently off and I want to keep it off for longer, I can extend it. But to do the opposite, if it's currently on and I want it to go off earlier, well, that would be grama. That on Shabbat we would say would be forbidden. On Yom Tov, halacha l'maaseh, we would say that on Yom Tov it's allowed. It's you could bring forward as long as it's not going off or on, whatever it is, right, vice versa. Now, but I could bring it forward on the time switch on Yom Tov. But anyway, it's partially based on the sugya. So Tosfot says, he says the following. He says, when we say mistapek menochav mishum machabeh, if I take oil out of the lamp, take oil out of the candle, I'm chayav because I'm extinguishing. I'm not extinguishing now. Okay, but what I have to essentially, it's like this is the ancient version of the modern time switch, right? You're bringing forward the time switch by taking out the oil. So Tosfot says that's not the problem. The Rosh says that's the problem. The Rosh says that's what it means when you say now I'm chayav mishum machabeh because I'm bringing forward the extinguishing of this candle. But Tosfot says no. He says it's not that. That's not the problem. Okay, because this is only gram kiboy. That is not a direct causation of the candle going out. That is indirect. That's grama. The gram kiboy by Yom Tov Shari. And indirect extinguishing, says Tosfot, on Yom Tov, that would be permitted. Okay. Even though you're bringing it forward, you're making it happen earlier. And so it says not only that, right? The Gemara says chayav. Says even on Shabbat you wouldn't be chayav because you're doing it indirectly. You'd be asumid rabbanan. Okay, wouldn't be chayav. So therefore, what? Elainu tama. What's the reason? Ho'il debota sha'ashu mistapek mimena mechabek tzat. Says Tosfot, no. When you take out the oil at that moment, you're causing the flame to flicker. That's what you're chayav for, right? He says that's a little bit of mechabek. Covering up or weakening the light. Now, when there's a bit, essentially the candle is becoming a little bit dimmer because there's now less oil. Okay, and therefore that is similar or that is considered to be kiboy extinguishing. We can, now. So those are the two different understandings of why this is called kiboy. And now Tosfot tells us what's the nafkamina between them. He says, "Mikan yesh latir kandila." Kandila sounds like candle, right? I assume it's the same. It's the same word. He says, "Yesh latir kandila shel shava," a wax candle, gdola. You have a large wax candle. Lachtoch lemata mimena kevan debshar shechotech ota eno machish me'ol shela klal. Says, if I have a wax candle that is burning, a large wax candle, am I allowed to cut it while it's burning? According to the Rosh, no, because that is the gram kiboy. You are causing it to extinguish earlier. But there's Tosfot, that's not the issue. The issue is that right now you're weakening the light. So with oil that would be the case, but with the candle it's the same. The candle's still burning just as much, and he doesn't think that would be a problem. He says, okay. Then he goes on. He says you have to cut it. You have to cut it with fire. If you come along and cut it with a knife or something like that, then he also thinks that's a problem for other reasons. But those are the two understandings of essentially why I'm Mr. Pek Meno Chayav Mishum Mechaber. Okay, so now let's go back.
So is the implication here that you would be able to add oil on Shabbat?
Well, no, because the Gemara says explicitly that you can't do.
But then wouldn't that be similar to the case of making your Shabbos clock stay on for a longer period of time?
If I'm adding oil, why would that not be similar? So again, I think the understanding is that maybe it's more direct. I think you would say that essentially I'm adding the oil right now. That oil is going to be that's adding to the flame. It's very, very hard to distinguish in that case, which this oil is burning and that oil is burning. I think that would be the distinction. But the Gemara does say explicitly, it says, right, Hanoten shemen baneh chayav mishum mavir. Yeah. It could be, so you're asking if it's a very, very large kli and there's a lot of oil in already, and then you add it, maybe yesh maladin. I'm not sure.
This isn't similar to what we say every Friday night. Chabet and there, listing, that was it.
Yeah. Perik, that's right. It's the same. It's the same idea. It's the same concept, because it's the same candle. And then, of course, the Gemara over there has a discussion about. So there's another Mishnah that says lo yikra adam lo aranim, right? That a person should not read. But this is an interesting question as well nowadays, right? But you cannot read according to the light of the candle. Why? Because you might come to tilt the candle. What happens if all my lights at home have gone out and I only have the Shabbos candles and I want to sit and learn or read or whatever it is? Am I allowed to sit and read by the light of the candles? So nowadays, I think most poskim would say that's okay, that you could, because those are wax candles. We're not worried that you're going to come and tilt them. But with these candles, that was a problem, and I'm sure I think we've spoken about it before. Right, there has a story of Rabbi Ishmael who says who sits and reads by the light of the candles, and he thinks about tilting the candles, or maybe he did tilt the candles. Right, we've seen that before. Okay. So now we're at the next two dots. We're about halfway down the Amud. Again, Kaf Bet Amud Aleph for those who joined late. Amar Rav. Kinva Shari. Okay, Rav says Kinva is allowed. What is Kinva? Says Rashi, Limchot Rosh HaPtila Shnasa Pecham. Sometimes you have a candle and you have the top, the wick is burnt a little bit, and it's almost like ashes or charcoal over there. You want to remove that, so that you'll be able to light the candle better, and it should light well. Says that is okay. You can move that away on Yom Tov. That's not muktzah. That is accepted. Now the Gemara gets into a little bit of a sugya about kiboy. Again, kiboy is very, very complicated. Our default position is to say that kiboy is not like havara or other melachot of ochal nefesh. Again, generally speaking, kiboy is not you're extinguishing, not for the purposes of cooking, and therefore we would say that kiboy itself is not going to be allowed on Yom Tov, as we've already seen. So, by mine, Abba Bamata Me'abaye. Here is the question. Abba Bamata asks Abaye, says, Ma'u lechabot et haner mipnei davar acher. Okay, well, there's one exception. We'll see it, that if in the act of extinguishing, I am doing that is in order to cook, so that's something else. But here it's not. So he says, Ma'u lechabot haner mipnei davar acher. Is one permitted to extinguish the candle for davar acher? What is davar acher? So that's a euphemism over here. Rashi says me davar acher. It says leshamesh mitato, for marital relations. Right, the halacha is that is only permitted in a dark room, not where. So if there's a light going on, there's a candle, and so he asks, is a person allowed to extinguish the candle on the night of Yom Tov in order to engage in marital relations? So he says, notice how Abaye does not give a direct answer to the question. He says, if Shabbat Beit Acher, he says, you asked if you can extinguish. You can go somewhere else. Go to a different house. Go to a different room, and do it over there. And then you don't have to extinguish the candle. So he says, Ein lo Beit Acher. He doesn't have anywhere else to go. So Amar lo. Sorry, that's the line before. Right? Ein lo Beit Acher. So Ein lo Beit Acher. Ma efshar la'asot. Ein lo Beit Acher. Ma. Right, what should he do if he doesn't have anywhere else to go? If sharasot lo mechitza, you can make a mechitza, right? Obviously in a permitted way, not in a way that's going to be considered a binyan, but you make a partition between the room and the light, and then it would be permitted. You don't have anything you can use to make a mechitza, then what should you do? So if you can cover up the candle with a kli. Obviously, it has to be the type of kli that you're going to cover it up. It's not going to make the candle go out. Right? So I guess it has holes in or whatever. But so he's ain't no kli. It's okay. Abaye, right? You're saying you should do this. This often happens. People experience this. You go and ask a rabbi a question. You say, is the thing allowed? What about this? What about this? What about that? Why should that? No, I don't want to know about this or that. I want to answer my question. Right? Is it permitted or not? So he says, right? Ain't no kli. So my lo asu. Okay, thank you. There's the answer. Says Abai, no, it's asur. You are not allowed to extinguish the candle for that reason. Itve. So here we have a challenge. Right, Itve. And the writer says as follows: Ein machabin et habkat kedei lachus alea. ואם בשביל שלא יתשן הבית או הקטרה, מותר. Okay, בקעת is like a big log, like a piece of wood that is on fire. So we say you cannot extinguish this burning piece of wood כדי לחוס עליה. If you want the wood, you want to save it. Essentially, that would certainly be a melacha. Generally speaking, by the way, the melacha of kibui. Interesting. Most of the time we say that kibui is considered a melacha she'enat shecha legufa, right? Because you don't want, generally speaking, you don't extinguish for the purposes of extinguishing. Extinguish because you don't want there to be a fire here. But if you want the charcoal, etc., that would be the classic case where it's kibui for the sake of kibui. I'm interested in the melacha. I'm interested in the kibui itself because I want to have this charcoal. I want to have this piece of wood, and therefore I'm interested in the kibui itself. So that is not allowed. Right? אין מכבין את הבקעת כדי לחוס עליה, ואם בשביל שלא יתעשן הבית. If this is because you don't want the whole house to get smoky, or you don't want the pot to get all smoky, so then it's mutar. Again, this is on Yom Tov, not on Shabbat. But in such a case, it would be mutar to extinguish. So I understand for the kedera, that would be related to ochal nefesh. But in b'shvil shelo yitashen habayit, the point is, you don't want your house to be full of smoke. That's not really directly ochal nefesh, and here we say that is permitted. So if that's permitted to extinguish, then why would it not be permitted to extinguish the candle for the purposes of tashmish hamita? By the way, I always think when it says so, sometimes you have. I remember once we had a case in England where we had something that was on the hot plate, something had spilt, and so something had spilt and was burning on the hot plate. And I remember we were sitting at the table. I walked into the kitchen, and suddenly there's just smoke everywhere. All over the kitchen. So very, very quickly opened the doors. The smoke would go out before the smoke alarm went off. It would be a very, very interesting, Shabbat meal, the rabbi with the smoke alarm going off and everything. But in any event, so if you want to prevent the house from smoking up, so you're allowed to extinguish this cut. So therefore, that is the challenge. If you can extinguish that, why can't you put out the candle for tashmish hamita? So says the Gemara. Amarle, hi Rabbi Yudai, ki kamina ana el-Rabbanan ba'imine. So there are two different opinions. We're going to see this a bit later on. We're going to see it on Daf Kafchet. But really, there's a machloket between Rabbi Yudai and Chachamim. So this writer, which tells me that I'm allowed to extinguish the kat kadesh b'shvil shelo yitashen habayit, that is the opinion of Rabbi Yudai. That is not the opinion of Chachamim. When we said Ein machabin et hanem l'fnei davar acher, that is the opinion of Chachamim. The question that was asked according to that, and the machloket between Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda relates to what we call machshirei ochel nefesh. We've spoken many, many, many times that melechet ochel nefesh is allowed on Yom Tov. But what about machshirei ochel nefesh? That means the work that is done that is not directly in the preparation of food, but it's the preparation for the preparation of the food. Okay, how far do you go? We have machloket in Masechet Shabbat as well regarding milah. We know that a brit milah is, when it's on time, is docher Shabbat, even though there are melachot that are involved. What about the machshirei milah? Right, preparing the knife or preparing other things. So that is not exactly the brit milah, but that is the machshirei milah. So there we have a discussion. Machloket Tanaim as to whether machshirim are allowed as well. So too, we have machloket regarding machshirei ochel nefesh. Rabbi Yehuda is the one who allows it, and therefore he would allow the kibui in this case, whereas Chachamim would not. Okay, so that is the difference between those two. Now the Gemara is going to ask a few more questions to do with kibui. But I think we'll stop there. We'll stop there for today, and we'll pick it up there just about halfway down the page. Pick it up from tomorrow. Okay. Have a great day, everyone.
Good day.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Nice to have you back.
Welcome.
Thank you.